Every pro was once an amateur, and every expert was once a beginner. Welcome to the DYA Network, where we're on a mission to bring you essential resources and cutting-edge information to help young athletes attain their maximum potential while developing the champion within. I'm your host, David Edwards, and welcome to the network. What's up, everyone? And yes, welcome to the DYA Developing Young Athletes Network that we call Network Nation. And welcome to this Monday's episode. Now, today, I'm excited because if you listen to last Monday's episode, I talked about the hip, especially the hip flexor. Listen to that episode. It's great because I had mentioned in that episode that I would be touching base on the foot and the ankle today. And that's what we'll be going over, because this is something that is real important, because I think this is something that we really overlook. So I highly recommend, if you're a parent or a coach, get a pen, get some paper, take some notes on this one, because I highly recommend that you listen and tell others that deal with young athletes, because this is an area I know with feedback I get from other coaches and organizations that lack this. And I'm not saying everyone does, but just off the feedback I get, this is something we really need to work on, because think about this. Our feet and ankles play a major role in what we do every day in life from the time our foot hits the floor. I mean, when functioning properly, they can reduce injury and increase our chance of or improve our sports performance. But I want everybody to think about something. How often do we train below the knee? The muscles, the ligaments, the tendons, the joints below the knee. This is an area that is overlooked, and I'll be at fault with that. I was younger with training. We didn't have this. When I even dealt with athletes years ago, I didn't even think about this. But you're seeing more and more of this. We're seeing it at the pro levels that they're doing this. I've seen a physical therapist trainer that deals with an NBA team. He's talked on this. I listened to a lecture that he gave. I'm sorry, I can't remember the gentleman's name. It's been a while back. But we need to understand how important it is that we also train the foot and the ankle. I'm also giving credit to this because I highly recommend everyone do this. Episode 23 was called Beyond Orthotics. Great gentleman that I interviewed was Dr. Brian Fulham. Dr. Fulham is a podiatrist, but he also has worked at the Olympic level with athletes. He's a runner, a former collegiate runner, and he works with athletes at all different levels. He has a book out that I'll be getting some of the reference. The information today is coming from this book. The book, I recommend you get it. It's called The Runner's Guide to Healthy Feet and Ankles. Now, he talks about in this first, simple steps to prevent injury and run stronger. It's dealing with running, but this all applies to what we're talking about today. And let's face it, every athlete runs. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you do some conditioning with running. So that book there is great because he points out a lot of great steps. He has some visuals and some things you can do for injury prevention. Some of the information I'm pulling from Dr. Fulham's book. So I highly recommend, again, Beyond Orthotics, episode 23. We have to look at it from this perspective, is that, let me break down some data to you here, some information. A lot of you, I don't even know if you know this. There was, and this is the Journal of Athletic Training, and this was back in 2006. And one thing they pointed out was that injury among United States sports athletes, 2005-06 is the name of it. And in that year, there was an estimated 326,396 ankle injuries that had occurred. Let me say that again. Let's just round it up. 330,000 ankle injuries. A lot of these ankle injuries occurred during competition. Could they have been avoided? Some of them could have. And this type of injury is a sprain. It's a common injury that occurs with young athletes, as I've indicated. Here's something else. The Journal of Physical Therapy Science done a study with training the foot. And this is what they found out. After these subjects that they had that have participated, their foot strength improved, their 50-yard dash time improved, their vertical and horizontal jump improved. So looking at it from a perspective of training the foot, they also noticed strength improvement. Now, again, these articles, these journals with the information, I'll have the links on our website. Go to this podcast for today's episode, and I'll make sure you can get this information here. Here's something that we need to understand with the foot. Our foot, ankles, our toes, they all play an important role, as I said, with injury prevention. Did you know there's over 26 bones and more than 100 muscles and tendons and ligaments in the foot and the ankle? We don't even realize that. And we got to understand there's 33 joints. And these muscles, tendons, and ligaments all play a great role in the functioning below the knee. A lot of these muscles and tendons originate, a majority of them, below the knee. So we don't even think of that there on how do we even work with it from that perspective. We're going to start off first looking at the foot, and then I'm going to touch base on the ankle. Let's first look at the foot from this standpoint. As I said before, it's the first thing that hits the ground, creating a kinetic chain. Within that kinetic chain, if our feet are effectively functioning, up the chain, things can perform better. But if our foot hits the ground, it is the foundation, the starting point. If there's any issues with the foot, it can affect the knees, the hips, the low back, even the neck. Think of a ripple effect. Think of this. This is something that I found interesting. I didn't even think about. Is that, and I've done this before with athletes, even my daughters, with pronated arches. How many of you have taken your child in? And it's not knocking the orthotics or the shoes, and you shoes you get because they might pronate it or flat feet to help create that arch. That's fine. Helping with running, especially runners, distance runners, sprinters, all different sports. But here's the thing. We provide them with those orthotics or those shoes with those orthotics built into them. But have we trained the intrinsic muscles of the foot to get stronger? Let's think about that. We put that on the foot, but what are we doing to train the foot? If an injury occurs, I want anyone out there that's had an injury, an ankle injury, and has gone through rehabilitation. Do they train the foot? If you've ever gone through physical therapy, what do they do? And anyone out there that works in physical therapy, you're nodding your head, you're right. We work with the foot. We work with the ankle. We work with proprioception. But never, we're being reactionary with the injury. We're not being preventive. We have to look at the foot. There's so many intrinsic muscles in the foot that we need to train and develop because the muscles in the foot play an important part. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you some exercises that you can do to improve foot function. But it is the foundation that we build off of. I want everybody to think about this with the foot. When we look at the foot, I want you to think about, it's called a joint by joint approach. So I want everybody to look at it from this perspective. If you look at a skeleton, our bodies are meant to function at joints specifically for their functionality to have efficient performance with movement, functional movement, to be efficient. At the foot, what you look at the foot for is for stability. At the ankle, you should have mobility at that joint. At the knee, stability. Up to the hip, mobility. Stability in the lumbar spine, mobility through the thoracic region, and stability at the cervical region. If our foot starts off and we don't have good stability, it's putting ripple effects into the ankle that travels up the kinetic chain. Because as soon as our foot hits the ground, we've created a closed chain. Now imagine if my foot is unstable. Imagine if the intrinsic muscles of my feet are not functioning properly. Some of the issues that we might have with our knee or our ankle can be related to our foot. So does that make sense, hopefully, that if we don't train that area, we can look at some functional issues that occur. So just remember that we're looking at mobility to stability through those joint lines. You can find this anywhere. This is not me coming up with this joint by joint approach to stack positioning of the musculoskeletal joints, and it can deal with the joints of the upper extremities as well. I'm concentrating on the lower extremities and the spine in relation to what we're going over today with the foot and the ankle. So just remember that. We really want to make sure that we have also where there's mobility, we also want stability. When I look at the ankle, let's move on to the ankle. The ankle is supported by sturdy ligaments, and their job is to provide feedback. and feedback through proprioception. If you remember just a minute ago, I was talking about if anyone's had an ankle injury and they've gone through physical therapy, they'll have you on an AirX. They'll have you doing things on single leg, working with proprioception, which basically is knowing where our bodies are in space. It's spatial orientation, and it's sending sensory neuron information from the muscles, tendons, and joints back through the central nervous system to the brain. So that's basically what proprioception is. Let me make that a little bit simpler the way I explain it. I'm not going to get too medical here with terminology, but if you think of it this way, imagine if you're walking on a concrete surface and you're at the beach and you walk on sand. You know how that differential is with that foundation, that substrate, that ground changes? Well, you get feedback from the foot through those areas I talked about, through the joints, through the tendons, through the muscles, that lets the body know, hey, wait a minute, there's been a change here. We have to adjust. Imagine if my ankle is weak, it'll give. Imagine if my foot is not stable, it'll give. We see this in sports. How many times does an athlete come? You see it a lot in sports where there's running, cutting, and jumping for a volleyball and come down and they twist their ankle and no one's around. Or you'll have a situation going for a cut and that ankle buckles. That's an area that could probably have been prevented if you strengthen the sturdy ligaments that support that ankle. So that's what I'm really going over here, is that if it's highly imperative that we do these things. And some of the things we do in physical therapy that is dealing with rehabilitation, we can implement that into programs that deal with strengthening and development of the foot and ankle. Now, I want you to think about this here. How many of you have ever had an ankle injury, and during the process of rehab and that ankle is now stronger, you've implemented that into your program? I've had guests on our show that have learned through injuries and said, you know what, I learned so much more that I wish I would have known that I could have applied to our program. Coaches, I'm bringing this up to you and parents too, because that is very important. I wanted you to think about this too. The better functioning the feet and ankles are, the better functioning up the kinetic chain. It starts there. But I want you to understand this too. I want you to take a note of this too. It also can expose compensatory patterns and weaknesses up the chain. That's why this is good also, is that the more we start to look at these areas of the body, starting at the foot with stability, and the more you have knowledge there, let's say a kid had knee pain. The first thing we want to do is we go and say, you know what's wrong? My knee hurts. So we go to the knee. And if the knee could talk and I could go to the knee, and I always use this for example, and I could talk to the knee and I could ask it, what is pissing you off? I guarantee you it's not the knee. It's above or below the knee. Imagine if I had a pronated arch. And if you watched our episode if you looked at been on our YouTube, our channel, and you looked at the squat screen, and you saw that valgus positioning, which can be caused by what? Pronated arch. If I'm a coach or parent, if I can screen that and see that, I can look above and below the knee now and say, wait a minute, it's not the knee that's causing the problem. The knee is also telling me this. It's not me. It's the foot. The foot is, I don't have a stable foundation. Remember, I have stability. But if I deal with stability, and the ankle deals with mobility. If the foot is not offering stability, look what happens with mobility. The body is constantly trying to get into a position where we have balance throughout. And when we look at a functional standpoint and we run into issues, those are situations where our body does this. It creates those compensatory patterns. If at the bottom of the chain there's an issue, others pick up for it, or they try, and it gives a shift in balance. It gives a shift in function that can occur and create injuries. So it's important that we understand that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And if you have a pain in an area, pain be your guide. We need to address it, but understand this. That's why you need to see a professional in those areas that understand high percentage of the time, the pain, unless it was a direct blow to that area, and it's something that is over time, that could be overuse or from just playing overuse with a specific sport or something you're doing in that same plane of movement, you got to readdress to say, well, wait a minute, it might not be coming from where my child or the athlete is complaining. I need to look at other things. That's why, coaches, I highly recommend that you start to look at the athlete when they're warming up, and that's what I'm about to get into, is how to look for these things here, things that we can do, some exercises you can do at home that can help to improve function. One thing is this: from a standpoint of the foot and the ankle, I'm a believer, if you saw the episode we had on our YouTube channel, is dealing with the jump rope walking. That's great. Heel to toe tandem walking is creating stability in the ankle. It's dealing with mobility and stability because you're losing balance with the process. Look at that. And you also can go to our training page on our website to look at single leg development as far as standing on single limb, and also with closing the eyes, because that's another proprioceptive process. When we close our eyes, we're trying to understand where we are in space, so our bodies have to make that adjustment as well. So those are two things right there. If you start looking at it from working with a jump rope is a good thing to do. So a tandem walk with a jump rope, even if you don't have a jump rope, you can do a straight line, heel to toe walk forward and backwards. Try it with and without looking and see how you function there. That's something there that can work on ankle mobility, stability. The other thing that I like that are some of these training things that you can do with athletes is this. I call this, especially in the off seasons that you can work with, is if you're limited with practice, some of the things I'm about to mention here, you can add into your dynamic warm-up. But you can also give these as far as home exercises that can be done. This is something that Dr. Fulham and it's just ironic, we both have mentioned this. I've used it before with athletes. He does it also. We talk about brushing your teeth barefoot. And you're brushing your teeth barefoot on one leg. And the thing is, intrinsically, the muscles in the foot have to fire and function to help stabilize up the kinetic chain. That's a great way to get proprioception involved, to get stronger with that movement with the upper extremity, this arm. You have to look at the fact that your arms are dynamic with movement, but your foot is static, and you're in that closed chain. Another thing is this. Try this. This is something coaches and parents, you can do this at home, especially if you have two athletes at home, or parents, you can do it with your kids, is one leg catch or ball wall throws. And what I mean by that is standing on single limb, and you're going to throw a ball back and forth to each other, and you're going to catch it. Now, this is what I want you to try to do. Parents, you're standing with your kid, throw it over the head, throw it to their side, throw it down low, trying to stay on that single limb. If you look at the ankle, a lot of things going on there. You're doing these things barefoot, and you're trying to stabilize and hold that. Now, anyone in physical therapy knows this. This is something that can be rehabbed with ankle injury. Some of this they do also with ACL up the kinetic chain as well. Other thing is this: throw the ball off a wall. Now, if you play a sport with overhead activities, try doing it as well. Throwing the ball off the wall. If you volleyball, throw that ball off the wall. Football, you're taking that ball, because we're working on eye-hand coordination. But also for athletes that are not overhead, do this as well, because the point I'm making to overhead athletes, we're implementing something that is sport-specific related to what they do. If I'm a receiver catching, I'm doing that. Single leg, throw that football to him. If I'm baseball, throw it. I'm a pitcher, I'm on single leg, throw that. Softball, single leg. Hopefully you're getting that understanding of how you can make it more sport-specific. Now you're working those single leg drills. Heel to toe, I've already talked about on the jump rope. Strengthening is this. Remember I said below the knee? Well, we have the front and the back of the knee. The anterior tibialis, we work the posterior chain, the gastroc. We also work the soleus, which help to lift the heel. Calf raises off of a step. 3 sets of 20. Can you get up to it bilaterally, both legs? Get to the point where you can do single leg. I've talked about this in another episode, but here's the thing. Whatever you increase range of motion, you also want to increase strength. So if I'm doing a calf raise and I'm dropping my heel, doing these with my knees straight, I'm going to drop down low into the heel. Pain be your guide. No pain with this. It's strengthening first, and then I'm coming up as high as I can on the balls of my foot to my toes. Then I'm lowering back down. 2 seconds up, 2 second hold, 2 seconds down, 2 second hold. The reason I'm adding the hold at the top and the bottom is at the top you're adding the isometric. You're slowly going down. You're dealing with eccentric control, they call it. And at the bottom, you're doing the hold, because guess what I just added into that? I just added a stretch. So not only you're strengthening, you're stretching. Now I want you to do this. While you're doing that, bend your knee. So if I'm standing in a straight stack vertical positioning, ear, shoulder, hip down to ankle, it's all in alignment off of that step. What I'm doing now is just shift your way forward and bend your knee. Your body's the perfect cheat sheet. This is what happens. Now you notice doing that, you're feeling it more as you drop the heels. This is a stretch too. If I drop my heels doing that, I'm feeling it lower down the leg, distal in the heel. You're stretching that heel cord. So as you lift up high as you can come and you lower down, what you're going to notice is I've taken out the gastroc, the gastrocnemius, and that's the big is of the calf muscles because it's a two-joint muscle. Now I'm looking at working a stretch more into the heel cord, which is the Achilles tendon, and I'm doing the same thing there, 3 sets of 20. Getting up to that. Start off with what you can do. And I'm just giving you guys a baseline of things you can do. Now, coaches at home, anyone dealing with athletes with training, this is what I want you to add to your dynamic warm-up. Heel-toe walks, and this is what I mean. If you're dealing with a dynamic warm-up, what they're going to do after they go through their basic starting warm-up is now you're going to have them do heel-to-toe walks. You're going to get on the balls of your foot, high as you can come, and you're going to walk for a good 10 to 15 yards. Start them off a good 10 yards on your toes. Guess what that's working? Balance at the angle, strength. We're working the posterior chain of muscles below the knee. Remember I talked about the gastroc, the muscles that lift the knee. You go down and back with that. Now you come where you're going to lift your toes off of the ground towards your shins. You're going to dorsiflex. Remember, with the heel, you're plantar flexing and walking. You're not letting the heels touch the ground. The toe walks, you're bringing the feet off the ground. You're dorsiflexing, and you don't want the ball of the foot or your toes to touch the ground. You're walking on your heels. Guess what you're working there? The anterior chain of muscles below the knee, the anterior tibialis. But you're also working some range of motion with that. And guess what? Oh, I'm also working with balance because what I want you to do with that, postural control. You're standing upright, stack position, ear, shoulder, hips, all the way down. You see how these things are starting to implement. We're working something we don't even realize. Jump rope is an excellent thing to do. A jump rope bilaterally off of both legs, and you get to the point where you can do it on single leg, but it's not a double hop. You want a point where as soon as your foot touches the ground, you're creating that force production, getting back up. Those quick jumps like a boxer. If you can only do 10, 15 seconds, that's fine. Get up to a point where you can do 30 seconds. 2 to 3 minutes is the goal. You created cardiorespiratory. This is part of your warm-up. ABCs with the ankle. This is working on ankle mobility. If you're sitting in a chair off of a bed with your feet hanging, what you're going to do is this. You're going to take your toe, your whole foot, and you're going to spell out the ABCs with your foot. Your ankle's moving through all planes of movement. You're working on mobility through the ankle, but guess what else you're working? You're also working, strengthening the muscles that fire to function that movement. There's some things you can do with the band with that as well, but I won't go into that because we have to get a video out that better explains it. I don't want to try to explain that. The ABCs are great to work with ankle mobility, but there's some strengthening there, especially with endurance, because as you get closer to Z, if you can to start, you'll know what I'm talking about. A to Z. And get up to doing 2 sets of those, go from Z back, and let's see how good are you going with the alphabet. Remember, these things are that you can add on to your home exercise program. The ankle ABCs is something at a home exercise. Now, let me get into some things for the more intrinsic muscles of the foot that you can do at home. This is great here. It's called grabbing marbles with your toes. If you have marbles at home, if you don't, take a sponge, cut it up into little small chunks. You're barefoot, you're sitting in a chair, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to try to grab those marbles with your toes. And this is what you want to try to do. If I'm grabbing it with my right foot, I'm going to move it over toward my left foot, and I'll have a pile of marbles. Put it into a towel. Put it on a towel or something so they don't roll around. Now I'm going to try to take and grab those marbles with the left foot, let's say 5 or 10, how many you can start with. And I'm going to try to move them back over. See if you do that twice with each foot. Here's the thing. Guess what's firing to take in so your toes can grab that? The intrinsic muscles of the feet. Guess what? When do we usually do this? In rehab. But if I strengthen those muscles prior to, it might help me perform better. We're seeing it with data that's coming out now. These are things that are great to add on. The other thing is this, a towel, basic towel at home, sitting in a chair. Take and grab that towel with your toes. You're sitting in the chair. You're going to put that towel under your bare foot, and you're going to squeeze. It has to be, of course, on a hardwood surface or a surface, not a carpet. You're going to grab that towel with your toes. You're going to squeeze it, hold it for a good 3-4 seconds, and release. See if you can do 15 or 20 of those with each foot. This is what you're going to find out. Parents, you can try this at home too. It's challenging. It's not as easy as sound. Here goes a bonus one for you. The same thing here for the intrinsic muscles of the foot. Take a long beach towel or a long towel, fold it in half, and put it in front of you. And at the end of it, at your foot is, let's say you're at 90 degrees with your foot. At the end of it, you're going to put, going out at the end of the towel, put a book. And what you're going to do is you're going to be 3 or 4 feet away from that book at the start of that towel. You're going to be at one end will be the book, at the other end will be your foot. Grab it with your foot. Now I want you to pull that book to you. Now think of the strength it takes to grab that towel and pull it. Guess what you just done? You just worked not only the ankle and the foot intrinsically. These are basic things. I know I got kind of long-winded with all of these exercises, but I wanted to give you guys things that you can add on to improving in these areas. And I want you to remember this as well. I won't go into these because this is a whole nother episode, but what's also important is this, and studies show this. It's also in the book from Dr. Fulham, is that it's also been proven that when with the foot, runners, but it's just not runners. All of us run, sprinters, everyone. The core and the hip strengthening is also important. So let me throw a couple of things with the core at you here too. The core, as we're dealing with core stability, plays a function. It's also hip. Hip, you can do clamshells with a band above knee, laying on your side. Google clamshells. It's all over the place. Clamshells, you can do exercises laying on sideline. You're laying on your side with your knees at around a 90-degree angle. The other core exercise I like are planks, traditional planks and side planks, and pal-off press. We're going to have videos coming out on the pal-off press as well. And that's it, everyone. Today, I wanted to go over these things. So try this. See what you're doing. Write down what are some things I already have implemented into a program that we're doing. Is any of this new? Are any things that, well, I have a busy schedule with my athletes, or I can't add this in. Remember the dynamic warm-ups, anything you can add into a warm-up. Well, I might not have time for this as well. Well, now you give the athlete the responsibility to do these things at home. A lot of kids right now, we already talked about the deconditioning of an athlete. A lot of them are getting back into sports right now. So this will be good, especially part of an off-season program, but something to implement into your season program, because the more we can prevent injury, the more we can get, as I always say, optimal performance. So everyone, that concludes today's episode. Tune in Friday as we go over something that is important too. Like I said, every Friday, if you haven't listened, we're going over the mindset of the athlete. Every Friday, I'm excited about it because it starts at the mind, but it also starts, like I said today, with the foundation, which is the feet, from a physical standpoint with function. So everybody, as I always say, take care and have a phenomenal week. Hey, everyone, visit our website at the dyanetwork.org for more information on ways to help the young athlete develop. And if you could do us a favor and leave us a rating or review, and please go out and share this episode, pass it along, we would really appreciate it. Until next time, remember, give 100% in life pursuing your dreams and never give up. Take care.